All right, here we are.
Here we are.
I was just saying you could start, Luke.
Oh, well, I didn't. You did it.
Okay, well, we're here recording our podcast, Unpacking Sunday.
That's right.
And we are at our staff retreat right now at Loon Lake.
We're in a beautiful lodge. It's like kind of like wood cabin-y style. There's a fire in the room, and we're sitting in these rustic chairs that have bears and fish and
leaves
and elk on them. And so
it's quite a vibe.
It's good. Well, there's issues with my microphone, so forgive the audio that sounds a little bit different than Mike's super crystal clear microphone right now, but we'll get that figured out. So.
Yeah. And it's not personal, like it's not you.
No.
It's the microphone.
It is.
Yeah. And today is also unique because we have a live studio audience, right? And so Julia is here, Javier's here, Rona's here, Alex is over there, and any of them might chime in at any time.
Yeah, we're going to give them opportunity if they want to
during this podcast.
Probably on Mike's microphone, though.
So if you want to... Oh, okay, Rona's coming over. Rona already wants to say something.
I just want to say how blessed we have been at this retreat. It's been amazing.
Straight from the words of Rona. There you go.
Can't beat it.
Rona's the best. Everybody say thanks to Rona when you see her.
Yeah, give her a hug.
Yeah, we're having a great time. But we want to talk about this very specific topic that this was one of the first questions that came in when we launched the Is It True series. And they're wondering how to handle arguments on social media. Like this person was saying... like they almost don't even recognize who they are sometimes on social media because they can get so wrapped up in what's happening. And so what do they do and what does the Bible say about that? So before I get into specifically what the Bible says about Instagram, why don't you give us your take on it?
Okay. Hot take. Yeah, it's interesting because...
the Bible doesn't actually say anything about Instagram.
No, it doesn't. But I know that. But it's interesting because there does definitely seem to be a disconnect with people from who they are in person to who they can be and the things that you're willing to say that you would maybe never say to a person in person, online. And you really see political status. You see, this internal, even looks like rage at times comes out online. And so that's interesting because there's science to it. There has to be science to it where it's like the lack of and consequences that can happen in the moment allow for people to act in a sense that they wouldn't act online. My son plays online sometimes with friends, and I've had to have some really, really in-depth conversations with him about just the things that you're willing to say with people who are these strangers online. And even if you find someone who's acting up, he plays this game called Gorilla Tag. I don't know if you've ever heard it's on a VR platform, but you've got these lobby full of like 50 12-year-olds. And some of the things you hear from these kids, because when my son's just like got the VR helmet on and he's swinging his arms back and forth like he's a monkey climbing in the trees. And then you'll hear these kids say these things and I was like, I don't know. Every time I'm like, I don't know if you should be playing this, right? It's like this kind of like, oh, it's just stuff you hear on a playground, but it's not. It's an online playground, so it's different, right? So, but yeah, there's something to be said about the lack of consequences and this initial platform of people can't see you, they can't react in the moment, so the consequences are different, which. There's something that like clicks in the brain for people to say things that they would maybe never even think of saying in public. Right.
There's a lack of apparent consequences. Yeah, because we think that we're so far removed from the situation, or like nobody can lash back at me right now. Right. They might write back to me, but there is like this anonymity to it, and like this nobody even really knows who you are.
Yeah.
Right. So they know whatever name you've put up there and whatever picture and whatever personality you've put out online, but people don't really know who you are. I would argue, like we were talking about this morning, there's actually more consequence. And so we were saying like, I don't post a lot online, and even things that I really feel, because it's online forever now, and anybody can see it. And whatever you just put online's in writing as well. So there's actually could be a lot of consequence for you.
And we're seeing in, with cancel culture and all that sort of thing, it's like even things that aren't online are finding people 30, 40 years later, right? These things are emerging. I can only imagine the resurgence of people finding the awful things that are being said and then being able to track the people down. Because I'm sure the technology will be there. It's like your face will pop up next to it or something at some point. You know, that kind of thing. It's just, but there's this, that apparent consequences aren't there. So it's
interesting, right?
It's a wild thing.
I had this actually, just being open, at one of my jobs when I was in Bible school. I was serving in this parachurch ministry, and my boss called me into their office and they said, I was on your Facebook and I just looked back like a few years at your photos and I saw this picture. Tell me about what was happening here, because it seems so strange. And so I was like, oh, shucks. So there is consequences for what you do, like even years and years later when you post something online. And it was nothing that crazy. It was just like, they were like, what a weird photo. Why would you put that?
Right.
So we do have to be careful of what we do. But I think that this is like a bigger conversation than just posting online. This is almost, tell me your take on this, almost a character issue, I would say.
I think so too. Yeah, I think it reveals the cracks in our foundations. I think when there's this, you'll just be shocked about what people are willing to say. And there's no real excuse for this behavior online, for people just feeling that they can able to just to tear someone apart or to act in a way that is malicious towards another person. It's what it is it's revealing things that are in there that are being hidden because of social pressures or because of social contracts or unspoken things in relationships, but they're there. And for some reason, this is this odd platform that allows for those cracks to be revealed. And so, I totally agree with you. I think there's a character thing. And I really think it just really grieves God's heart when he sees his children acting in this way. So,
and I think there is a calling for how we conduct ourselves as believers. And we're actually going to get to this when we come back to our Romans series this fall, because it's Romans chapter 12, all about like how do we live this out? And Paul kind of gives us all these quips and little short sentences of how we ought to conduct ourselves. But one of the things that he says in Romans chapter 12, verse 18, he says, if it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. Do not take revenge. These are instructions. And we don't really do that very well online.
Right.
If it's possible, which online it absolutely is, you do not have to write anything. Right? And you certainly don't have to write anything harsh or rude. As much as depends on you. So also that reminds me, it doesn't matter what the other person said. It's as much as depends on me, I should live at peace with all people. What does living at peace really mean, and what does it look like?
Well, I think it goes not only with reactionary, but you also will find people posting things that they know will create a buzz. And they know that you will rub other people the wrong way. And it's this atmosphere of tension that people are willing to react to, that people are actually diving into. They're looking for a fight at times. So, I feel that there's multiple sides of this coin. But when you go back to that character part of it, it's just such a hard line to, like, how can a person really take a step back and look at their behavior, and that's almost what is required when you sit down at your keyboard and you're looking on your social media threads, and it's like, how can you check yourself before you wreck yourself, if you will, that kind of, it gets down to it, because it feels like there's no inhibition at times. Right. People are willing to just dive right in and to get into these conversations and to throw these things around that can be so hurtful. And
right. Yeah. And I'm reminded, actually, one of the fruit of the Spirit. So as we know God, one of the things that he grows in our life is self-control. And that's really what you're talking about. Yeah. Is like there will be many moments online where you're going to see things that disgust you or surprise you or anger you, or that you're so pumped about, and you're even rude in your zeal for some things. But we ought to have self-control and be tempered in the things that we do. Here's a question, and then I'm also want to throw it to Julia, because she's our communications director. Yeah, Julia, you can tell us something. She doesn't want to, so we'll decide in a sec if we're going to go to her. But I actually do want to know this. we want to take a stand for some things. There are some things we want to take a stand for. So what is a reasonable way to do that online?
Right. Well, I don't even know if there is a reasonable way because it's such an echo chamber. It's there. It's like truth is distorted. People's like stance on things become distorted. It's like you can be sometimes arguing about things that aren't even real. I posted the other day, I saw this, and it's just like a perfect example of this sort of situation. I saw that there was a young missing girl who's been gone for a week or something. And it's like the post says it takes 5 seconds to post, help us find our little girl. And it was, kind of like her description of where she last was and everything. And I'm like, oh, I can absolutely do this. And so I did it. And then initially several people commented saying, this is a scam. This isn't real. They're trying to retrieve your information. And I'm like, how brutal is that something, pulling on your heartstrings for a real picture image of a person, but it doesn't even exist. And then people started arguing about whether it was real or not. And so it's like, and so it's like this thing where it's like, I felt filled with compassion for this poor girl and her family who it's not even a real situation. And that's essentially like at the heart of it, things have become so convoluted that you don't even know if you're arguing something that's real or not, that kind of, so yeah. So I would say this idea of making a stand for something, it's like you have to be so cautious about if it's even a proper platform for that.
So in the age that we live in, though, then what is a proper platform for making a statement or taking a stand for things? Because we live in this age where this is how we communicate.
We live in
right?
the world of deep fakes, if you will.
And Julia, you don't have to be on the mic, but is there a way we can do that or no? Yes or no? She's thinking. Like, how do we take a stand online?
Yeah.
How? Or maybe we don't. We can land on we don't. I don't think I land there. Oh.
Like, why do you need to?
Here we go.
I would just pose the question.
Just go really close. Yeah.
You'll edit this, right?
Yeah, I will.
Okay.
Maybe.
I don't know. I guess I would kind of just pose the question, like, why is it necessary? Especially if, you're not a public figure, or like, why do we need to be sharing like all of our thoughts all the time on things? Like, are we just adding to the chaos of what's online? Or, I don't know, can we keep our thoughts to ourselves sometimes?
Right. So there is like some validity to like not posting absolutely everything that we think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are there ways that you can like say something online without like arousing all this conflict?
Well, that's hard because
way?
you're placing it in a public forum where you're having all these people who are dealing with the same sort of issue of this self-control. So you can be looking at your own heart and your own life and how you're wanting to communicate, but you can't control the way the masses, the public, is going to then look at it too, which it creates this kind of like vicious spiral of so it's hard because there's a, like Julia just said, you're almost inviting conflict because that you see there's even posts about like you'll see people, it's in jest, but it's a reflection of the reality of it. So it's like, just to prove that people can argue with anything, this is a picture of a stick. And it's just a picture of a stick. Mm-hmm. And then people jokingly will respond, no, it's not, that kind of thing. But then even through that, you'll see people reacting and then getting into arguments for no reason. So
do we not share
tricky.
Things that maybe are true and that are right just because we don't want to arouse conflict? Because then this plays back into like in real life, even offline. Mm-hmm. Do we not say things just because they might make people upset?
Yeah, I'm at a place where I'm not even sure how to approach it anymore. And I usually do take the path of least resistance in that sense. I'll see things that kind of, affect me, or it's like, I don't agree with that, or it really bothers me. But I look at the big picture and I'm like, is it even worth approaching this subject? Because am I just adding to the noise, like Julia said? Am I just, creating another branch of this tree that can invite other people to come and argue with you about it? And so that's hard, because is there really a space for this in this day and age besides on the online forum?
Right. And then, so how does that play even into the church then?
Right.
Like, do we not preach because people will be mad?
No, I think that's not it at all. But I think, again, you step into these situations where there's social contracts and people are in public, in person, won't react the same way. They may feel it, but at very least they, maybe write an email if it really bothers them or whatever. But can you imagine if you had a a live public forum as you were preaching for the people in the room who could just say anything they want? That would be a wild experiment to kind of create that's online feel, in like a public actual stance. It would be interesting to see if people are quiet or if people are inviting, but at the same time, you have people attending church who have a desire to be there. They have a desire to learn the word. You don't know what you're going to get in a public forum online. So,
but we also then post this kind of stuff online. So should we not be posting stuff as to not arouse things online?
No, I think that there is a place for it, especially from being, an organization that is established, and it's different when you're like someone sitting in your parents' living room at 2 a.m. and you see some sort of racist post and you post that, as opposed to, posting biblical truth from a church. I think there's definitely different things.
Okay, so then this is a good question. What's worth posting? Because we talked about that before. Like, both of us kind of say we don't post a lot, right? What's worth it?
I would post. For the most part, I would welcome posting things that I find that really strike me as true and as beautiful and as like the heart of the Father, whether it invites comments or not. I think you have to be so careful when you say things that especially in politically heated things, or having to do with a lot of these things that we've been talking about in church. It's like you post something about Trump, you're gonna get a whole bunch of people commenting, whether because they either love Trump or they hate, whether they stand. I think if you post something about Jesus, who is a very decisive figure as well in the world, people at least, but if you're, it's interesting because you could, if you post a picture of Jesus and say God is love and Jesus loves you, there's not a lot of like arguing in that sense where people can argue against that, and then they'll probably, people who are angry about church stuff or anything like that would probably want to chime in. You run the risk of that. But at the same time, if you go as far as posting something that says, there's only one way to the Father and everyone else is going to hell, then in that online forum, you're definitely going to get, you're going to get people who are going to get really heated about that. So it's interesting because there has to almost be a strategy in like posting truth, but being aware if you're not kind of taking a middle line that isn't going to strike people the wrong way. But at the same time, the question was, is it worth posting? And I think you have to kind of, in this day and age, find, is there hills that you want to die on, right? And is it worth it to create a storm online, if you will, of your peers, of people who are in your circle and stuff? And it's different because like something like Facebook, you have a circle of friends that you have added and invited into it. It's not like it's just like the broad world spectrum. So for me, I would say the majority of people who are my friends are people who I've met through songwriting circles or through church or something like that. So I know that, but there's definitely going to be some on there that are going to say something that, if they disagree or not. So yeah, it really kind of comes down to if you're willing to follow up and kind of fight for what you've said. And then at the same time, you know, that can even get into like the gospel conversations that you can have in person, right? It's like, it's a similar thing of, are you willing to risk a relationship for the gospel? Are you willing to come across as a person who can look like, you know, a divisive figure or speak against what people are, how they're living their lives in a gospel conversation with a person who doesn't know Jesus? And, you know, it can look like a similar thing.
So I still don't understand what's worth posting.
I don't know if I'm the person to decide that. What do you think is worth posting? For us, yeah.
Yeah, it's a good question. And so I guess even as we're like talking about what it says in Romans, like to live at peace with all people, what does it mean to live at peace? Does it mean that like we never rock the boat ever? I don't think we can be Christians and not rock the boat. You can't do that. It doesn't, it's never existed. But what can happen is even what you're saying is like, if you're going to post something, you're committing to walking in grace and humility through all the conversations that this is going to raise after.
Yeah.
And that you're not going to retaliate with like hate and anger toward people who disagree with you. I think that that's actually quite a fair point. That like, if this is worthwhile enough for you to walk somebody through it, and it's true, like that's the other thing is I appreciate what you said. What's the hill you're willing to die on? For me, like you asked the question, are you willing to risk a relationship to share the gospel? Hands down, yes. But will we do that in love and in kindness? And, you know, there is one way to the Father, but am I going to like post, you're going to hell?
Yeah.
Like that's not helpful
at
that moment.
Exactly.
Right? But is there only one way to the Father? And that's true? Sure. Absolutely. Right? And then to walk in grace and truth alongside people, even if they disagree with you. I appreciate that you brought that up. Is like, there is a way, like even in follow-up, that we don't have to, because someone disagreed with us, we have to then write 6 paragraphs to them about how awful of a person they are. That's what I see quickly happens online, is things quickly go downhill into like character shaming and like getting mad at a person because they don't hold my view. And I remember we were talking to Alex even this morning about this. And like he was kind of saying that same thing. We have so many people who will post all this stuff online, but they would never be willing to have an actual conversation with you about this, right? Because it's so easy. And we do a lot of things. Like, so are you posting online just for a reaction? Because that happens a lot too.
For sure.
Right? Julia has a comment.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I feel like your intention and like the way you present yourself matters. And yeah, like your intention for why you're posting. Like if it is to start an argument or to like condemn someone or to be hateful, like you guys were saying, like that's not good. But like if you're and then yeah, like you have to be willing to face, I guess, the consequences of what you're sharing. And yeah, I don't know, that's just my little comment.
And like face the consequence of what you share, like in a calm, Christ-like way, right?
Yeah, and be willing to engage in those personal conversations in DMs or whatever. Hey, why don't you write me personally and we can talk about this? So
just really quickly, as we maybe have like 2 minutes left, this person, when they wrote this, they included like that they feel almost like they lose themselves online. Like, like they get so worked up, they can't help but write back in anger toward people. So is there some like advice or boundaries that we could give to this person, or some suggestions that we could give if people are finding themselves there? Because like we said, it is this like pit that we can that we sometimes find ourselves in, where we'll just post whatever we want because we feel like we can, because it's online. So what kind of advice could we give for that person who's like, okay, I hear this, I know I need to be gracious, I know I need to be kind online, I know I need to think about my intention, but when I get online I just can't help myself?
Right.
What would you say?
Yeah, it's you could go practical levels and like give yourself like a checklist on the wall by your computer or whatever, like that kind of thing. It's like, is this loving? Am I being caring? Even just like posting scripture that is a reminder that, the tongue is like a sword and is evil, that kind of thing, right? Or the keyboard is like a sword, it's evil, that kind of thing. Or, there's other verses about living your life in ways, or turn the other cheek in a sense. It's like, how do we need to remind ourselves to be the person that God's calling us to be in a place that's like when you step into that online world, and also to be aware that we live in a time and in a world where most absolutes are offensive, and you're going to get a reaction.
Right. So be cautious.
Be cautious.
Conscious and cautious.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. This is where I would go. And so give me your feedback as we wrap up. I would say, like, if you are saying, I can't control myself online, do not be online. I think it's very simple.
Right.
And like, even we read about that in scripture too. Where's the verse here? Verse 9. If your eye causes you to stumble, gouge it out and throw it away. It's better for you to enter life with one eye than to have two eyes and be thrown into hell. Right. So just don't have social media if you can't be respectful and responsible on it. That's why kids don't have it, because they don't have the reasoning to be on social media in a safe way. So I think more adults could maybe take that advice too, is don't be on it.
Yeah, I think it's just like, it has to be a subject that is real for you. If you are your worst self at a certain place or a certain gathering of people, and you feel it's an unhealthy place for you, and you feel that you can't function within the boundaries of proper behavior, then you're going to not go to that place. You're not going to.
We would do that anywhere else in life.
Exactly. Yeah. Be it a social gathering, be it like a bar or something like that. It's like, who knows? Bingo hall, who knows, right? But it's like, you have to look at social media being that. If you are your worst self on Facebook, maybe you should delete Facebook.
And it really is a place that we go. Like, even if you look 100%. At like how we spend our time, like you go and you like spend your hour cruising Facebook or Instagram, and that's your community for that time that you're on your phone or on your computer or whatever. And so it is a place that we go, really.
We have to look at, what are we trying to find and what are we trying to get from these places that we go?
Yeah.
Is it good? Is it in pursuit of holiness? Is it, are you able to function in a way that you are considered Christ-like? And if not, you need to stop going to that place.
Right.
I think it's as easy as that.
Yeah. Yeah. And get people to help you as well. Because, I mean, we do live in a time where some people find it hard to not be online. Other people are very happy to not be online. But you need to find a rhythm in your life that allows you to honor God in all the things that you do. So I like your ideas. Like, maybe we start here, right? Write a checklist, remind yourself how to conduct yourself online. And if that's not working, it's probably time for you to not be on those platforms. To unplug. Yeah. Be on sabbatical. Yeah. Facebook sabbatical.
Yeah. That could be a different podcast, Unplugging Sunday. Yeah.
All right. Okay, I'm sure we have more questions, and we are going to do some follow-up episodes, because we've had some other questions coming in.
Yeah, one real heater that we got was a colleague.
Do you watch the show Life in Pieces?
I love Life in Pieces.
And when you just reminded me of it, because he gets the tattoo heater on, and he said one real heater. His wife's name is Heather.
Oh, yeah.
But it's a typo in the tattoo, and his tattoo says heater.
So funny. But I think, one was saying that the Old Testament isn't, the phrase?
Is irrelevant.
Is irrelevant for this day and age.
Yes. So we can address that.
And we're going to unpack that.
There were two other ones. We want to talk about church hurt. That's come up a couple times.
Yeah.
And then after last week's episode about marriage, we want to talk about, how do I live a godly marriage when my spouse isn't?
Right. Wow.
Or when my marriage is not safe.
Okay.
So we want to talk about those things. So we'll have some follow-ups coming.
Okay. So thank you for joining us today from Loon Lake, and we will see you next time.
And thanks to Julia and Rona for contributing
thank you for
to
being
our
here, guys. Thank you for the whole thing.
Yeah.
We'll see you next week.